Greetings everyone, this is Chris from OverclockersClub. Today we have not one but two cases from Zalman to look at. We have the Z11 Neo and the Z9 Neo. They're both mid-tower cases, so let's get them out of the boxes and see what they look like. We'll start with the Z9 Neo. This is a mid-tower case. We'll start with looking at the exterior features of the case, and then we will open the panels up. We'll take the top and the front fascia off and look at the inside of the case and see what's going on there. So let's start with the very front of the case. Swinging around here. The front, we have a very conservative rectangular shape. It's all squared off. We don't have any fancy convoluted vents or anything like that. We do have a solid door. The front has a brushed aluminum appearance with a vertical grain to it. We open the door, and first thing I see here is we have a nice insulated area for sound deadening materials incorporated into the door. Keep your fan noise down. We have two optical drive bays. We have a mesh area here for the intake air from the internal fans to pull the fresh air in from the front of the case. So when the door is closed, we do have two side vents on either side here that allow fresh air to be drawn in from the side. We have a similar type vent at the top here. That's for the exhaust air to be pushed out the top of the case. Let's look at the top of the case. We have our typical USB 2.0, USB 3.0 ports. We have two of the 2.0, two of the 3.0. And we have these little rubber plugs here that keep dust and dirt out of your USB ports, which is a nice little feature there. We have a microphone and a headphone jack. We have a reset button and the power button for the case. Across the top, we have something a little different. We don't have like a louvered or a mesh panel. We actually have this section here that has an opening around the perimeter. And to get more airflow there, this little plastic trim piece pops off, so you can use this to get more air into the case. And it just snaps right back on there. So let's take a look at the side of the case. Side door here, we do have a nice side panel window, decent amount of space. It protrudes out about 1/4 inch, and it has sort of a very light smoked appearance to it. A lot of the cases now are going to a side window that is, well, the entire side panel is a window. It's just one big piece of plastic. And I like that. It allows you to show off a lot of your hardware components. And this is a decent sized window. You can still see what's going on inside there. Let's flip it around to the back and take a look. There's the 120 millimeter rear exhaust fan, the opening for the I/O panel of the motherboard, which pops in from the inside of the case. We have our 7 PCIe expansion slots. There's also another little vented section here to allow air in and out of the case. And then at the very bottom, we have our opening for our power supply. Look at the other side here. Now, there's not much going on. We just have a solid side panel. The finish looks nice on it. Nice, even, consistent. Again, we have our little vented section here on the front that allows additional air to be drawn in from the front intake fans that are inside. We'll see those here in a moment. And we have another vented section here across the top to allow the hot exhaust air out of the case. Now, let's take a look at the bottom of the case. And across the bottom, we have approximately 3/4 inch to an inch of clearance, so you can get fresh air circulation under the case, which is important because here is the intake for your power supply. And nice feature here, I do like this little filter. It's very convenient, easy to remove. This is what will trap all the dust and dirt that's being drawn in by the intake fan of your power supply. So you want to make sure you keep this clean, check it at least monthly. And that pops right back in there. And we do have 4 little rubber pads here on the feet to help to keep from scratching your floor. All right, next we'll get the case open and see what's going on the inside. Now we're ready to pop the side panels off. We'll start with the front door here, the window door. We'll take that off and see what's going on the inside. We have an instruction manual and some additional screws to attach the motherboard to the motherboard tray, a couple extra standoffs depending upon the configuration of your motherboard, and instruction manual, some zip ties. This particular case, the Z9 will handle an ATX, a micro ATX, and a mini ITX. So you have a nice range of motherboards that this case will handle. One of the first things I noticed when I opened the side panel here, we have this enclosed area. I'm seeing this more and more on newer cases. I like it because it helps you focus on the build and the motherboard and the hardware that's attached to the motherboard. In that respect, I like that. But the only thing I don't like sometimes is if you have a really nice power supply and you want to show it off, you can't because it's all covered up. Sometimes these are removable. This one in this case is not, so your power supply will be covered. We do have two rectangular holes here for your cable feeds to come up from behind the enclosure, inside the enclosure, up to the motherboard if you need to. We have a vented section here because if you also notice, there are no hard drive trays here. That's because your hard drives are behind this section of this enclosure. The vented area again is to allow some air circulation for those hard drives. And the front, and it's probably a little hard to see, but the front here has some slots, some openings for the air that's drawn in from your front fans to help enter this enclosure and keep your hard drives cool. Now, our grommeted holes here for your cable pass-throughs, we have 5 of those. We have 3 larger ones on this side and then 2 at the bottom. And at the top, we have our optical drive supports for our optical drives. Now, a lot of cases are starting to actually phase those out. There was a time when cases came standard with a floppy drive opening, and those have been phased out several years ago, and we're starting to see the optical drives more and more also be deleted or eliminated in favor of USB storage, which seems to be the way that we're going. Now we'll talk about the cooling fans here a little bit. We have 2 LED 120mm fans at the top, and I find this a little curious. We have Molex connectors. We have them on the front fans also. We have 2 120mm front intake fans. They're not LED fans, but they also have the Molex connectors. Now I haven't seen Molex connectors for quite some time on fans. And there's nothing wrong with Molex connectors. They can sometimes be a pain to plug in. They'll fight you when you try to plug them into your power supply, the Molex leads on your power supply. And you got to be a little careful now because as the Molex connectors are also being phased out, these were once common, they were all over the case. You don't see them anymore really. Your power supplies also are phasing them out. A lot of them only come with your power feed for SATA and SATA components. Sometimes they'll only have a single feed with 1 or 2 Molex connectors on it. They do make little adapters that will go from SATA to Molex, but if your power supply doesn't have that and you don't have the adapters, you're going to build your case and be disappointed because you won't be able to hook your fans up until you get the adapters. Now the rear exhaust fan is 120mm also, but it has the old standard 3-pin plug here that plugs right into your motherboard. So I'm not real sure why we have the combination of why the mix and match here with Molex and the regular. Regardless, it'll still work. So let's take the back panel off here. Now again, we have this little compartment where the power supply will be installed. And our hard drive tray at the bottom here, we actually have 2 little plastic toolless hard drive trays. And the nice thing is we do have mounting holes, mounting provisions for solid state drives. So if you don't want to use the old standard spindle drives, we can use solid state drives here. We have space here for 2 of them, so you could put 2 solid state drives or 2 regular drives here. And we do have mounting provisions here for 2 more solid state drives. So you could have up to 4 solid state drives in this case. We also have our Velcro cable ties to assist with our cable management. The other thing I like about this, we have roughly 3/4 of an inch, close to an inch of offset here for our cables. So your power supply cables that get fished up through the back here, a lot of times if this area is too shallow, you've got all these cables you're trying to stuff in and you try to install the back panel and it just bulges out and it's a real pain. So it looks like they've left us adequate room here for our cable management. Now we'll pop the top off and see what's going on there. And as we talked about earlier, there's actually a vented perimeter around this, not a complete opening like we see on a lot of cases. Now what we have here are mounting provisions for 120mm fans. A lot of times we have additional holes so that you can use 140mm fans, but here we're limited to 120mm fans. So if we used a liquid cooling radiator at the top, we would be limited to a 240mm radiator in this position. Now we'll look at the front fascia here. We'll pop that off. Now we've got wires that are still connected to it, so we'll have to be a little careful that we don't let this fascia fall forward. It should just pop right off, and it does. And we'll see what's going on behind it. Now we also have a filter panel here. This is the filter, the mesh filter that we talked about earlier. And this doesn't have a frame, it's just a simple free piece of mesh. This will get clogged with a lot of dust and dirt and fuzz very quickly too. So you want to pay attention to that, or you'll restrict the fresh air that your two intake fans can draw into the case. Now as far as front cooling, if you want to put a liquid cooled radiator in the front, we have two 120 millimeter fans, so you could go with a 240 millimeter radiator. But the nice thing is we do have mounting holes so that we can put 140 millimeter fans in here. So you can go with a 280 millimeter front all-in-one liquid cooled radiator. And since this panel here, this enclosure doesn't really move, we still have space here to space the fans back if we mount the radiator. And you could put the fans in the front and mount the radiator to this panel also. So we do have enough support for up to a 280 millimeter radiator in the front. So we'll go ahead and get this case put back together, and we'll get the OCC motherboard and get the build in there, and we'll take a look at the thermals and see how this case holds up. All right, we have our Z9 all assembled here. We're going to do our thermal testing in just a little while. But I wanted to show you what the blue LED fans look like from the top. They have a really nice blue glow across the inside of the case. And the other thing I wanted to point out, the cooler we use is the Noctua D14, which has been around for a while. It's still a very relevant and capable cooler. However, in this case, it just fits. And by just fits, I mean the very end of the heat pipes there where they've terminated almost touches the clear side panel. Not quite. So that thing fills the case up to the absolute limit. But it does have a nice blue glow from the fans, and then when we look at the top of the case, you can see the blue glow coming from the top vent panel, and then we have the nice blue glow from the power button. Now we have the thermal testing done between the Z9 and the Z11, and between the two cases, the Z9 actually ran a little cooler. We'll have those numbers posted on the web page. But the Z9 did run a little cooler, and that's not a big surprise considering the fact that we have two fans in the top from the factory, and we have two fans in the front. So we have more airflow going through the case on the Z9 than we do the Z11. The other thing I do like about the Z9, other than the fact that we do have extra fans, is the cable management is a little cleaner. There's a little more depth at the back of the case here. Behind the panel, we have a little more room back here for running our cables. And any excess cables, we do have some space. The section there that covers the power supply, there's some space there that you can neatly tuck cables away. So it was just a little bit easier on the Z9 to hide the cables. Price-wise, again on Newegg, the Z9 is coming in the $59, $69 range, although there's a rebate now currently on Newegg where you can get it for $49, which is a really good price for this case. So, if you want to check the website, we can see what the thermals look like. Again, this is Chris from Overclockers Club, and thanks for watching.